worship him. Wise men follow that star, follow that star wherever it guides. Follow that star both far and wide. Follow that star, just follow that light. Oh, wise men follow that star, wise men follow that star. Wise men follow that star.
Thank you, guys. Oh, man. Kevin, I didn't know you could hit those high notes. It was a great job. Thank you so much. I didn't feel like you got transported back to the 50s. You know, like, yeah, it was like in poodle skirts and things. That was pretty good. That was amazing, amazing. Well, welcome to the final service of 2024. Pretty crazy, right? Pretty crazy to think another year. The older you get, they seem to be quicker they seem to go. Like, man, we're just, chalking up years. Here they go. Today's a little bit different. Our children are in our service today. We don't have our kids' service today, giving our teachers a little bit of a break today. And it's just a valuable time for us all to be together. And so I will, just some of my comments today will be a little more, I'm recognizing there's kids here today, so I'll try and talk in a way that everybody can hear it. But a long time ago, Jesus used to walk from town to town, and periodically he would stop, and people would gather around him, and he would listen to him as he would teach. So he just sort of traveled through these towns, and he would teach all different people. And he would teach not necessarily in schools, but in open fields. He would teach in a house. He would teach on a hillside. He would teach wherever the people gathered. He taught on a boat. He would teach, just about anywhere that he was. He'd take an opportunity and he'd teach. Sort of like some of you parents, you never missed a good teaching opportunity. It doesn't matter where you are, we're going to teach you right here and right now. Jesus would talk and the people would listen. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if like school were like that? Like if instead of going in a classroom and sitting at a desk and all this stuff, like if you could just like walk through a store and you'd learn math through like actually like getting prices and doing all this like real world experience. Wouldn't that be cool? Or if like your physics teacher would take you to like a racetrack, like a car track, and you'd be talking about, I don't know, speed and impact and all this kind of stuff, force like through actually being in a track. Or if science took place in a garden, right, as you study bugs and flowers and light and all these different things, like that would be really cool. It might be weird if your teachers came to your house and taught you in your living room, unless you're homeschooled, and in that case, that's pretty much every day for you, and so that's possible there. But what was interesting is about the way Jesus taught people is that he allowed them to interrupt and ask questions. So, like, imagine as I'm talking here, if he'd be like, "Hey, I got a question. I don't know, Pastor Dan, what are you saying there? I'm not sure I understand that." Like, Jesus had this sort of dialogue going on constantly. And I don't know if people would raise their hands, but the scriptures tell us that often people would interrupt or be confused by something he was teaching, and they'd ask him to clarify. They'd be like, "Hey, Jesus, what are you saying here?" And that's a good life principle. If you don't understand something, ask. Yeah? Like, ask. You know how many people walk around pretending that they know, and they don't know, and it causes problems? Anybody? Is that true? Yeah, okay, no, I think it's true. It can cause a lot of problems. See, Jesus was teaching people new ideas, and as the people were hearing these new things about God, things they'd never heard before, they had questions, and he welcomed their questions. He was glad they asked them. Now, most of the people Jesus taught were Jewish, and they had grown up learning Jewish traditions and Jewish ways. And if you don't know, there are a lot of laws that the Jewish people lived by. Over 600. 600 laws. Like, imagine having to know 600 things. It's something that many Jewish people are often thinking about, always thinking about the law, the rules. What are we supposed to do? What does the situation call for? So one day, as Jesus was teaching, one of the teachers of those Jewish laws thought of a question. I got a question for you. I got a question for you, Jesus. And he asked a really great question. He asked you, he said, "Okay, Jesus, I teach all these laws. I teach these. Which one of these laws is the most important?" Which one's the most important? Out of 600 laws, was there one that's more important than all the others? In order to answer that, for Jesus to answer that, he had to have known all 600. Right? You can't say that if you have an incomplete understanding. You had to know all 600. You have to know them all. So he's basically testing Jesus, saying, do you know the laws? And if you know the laws, can you highlight one over another? And I'd like to read for you how Jesus answered. It was in Mark chapter 12. It records for us that one of the teachers of the religious law was standing there listening to a debate between Jesus and others, and he realized Jesus had answered pretty well so far. So he asked him this question. Jesus said, sure, I got an answer for you. The most important commandment is this. Listen, O Israel, the Lord is the one and the only Lord. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. He says the second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment is greater than these. All right? The teacher of religious law replied to Jesus and said, well said, teacher. That's a good answer. I wasn't expecting that. That was actually better than I thought. You've spoken the truth by saying there's only one God and no other. And I know it's important to love him with all my heart and my understanding and all my strength, and to love my neighbor as myself. It's more important than to offer all the burnt offerings and sacrifices required in the law. Realizing how much the man understood, Jesus said to him, let me tell you the truth, you're not far from the kingdom of God. So Jesus passed the test. He actually, he answered the question, but not only that, he actually did better. Not only did he know all the laws, he knew which one stood out most of all, but not only that, he didn't just say this one was more important than all the other ones. Jesus says all the other laws are actually summed up in this one. That if you do this one thing, you will actually do all the others. It's incredible. He said, you don't have to memorize 600 laws. You have to know one. You only need to know one. How many of you would like Jesus as your teacher and everything? Like, can you just sum it up for me? Can you just give me the one thing here? Like, wouldn't it be nice if you could just sum up everything so simply? If your math teacher says, hey, just remember this one math principle and all math will make sense. Sign me up. Sign me up, right? If you, to understand business, you just have to understand this one thing, right? My dad gave me some things like that. He said, listen, all plumbing is gravity and seals, right? He's got gravity, water always comes through gravity, and it works that way, and make sure things are sealed right. That's plumbing. If you're a plumber, you'd go. But that was his solution, right? And all electricity is connectivity. It's connections. It's all about just making sure you got a good connection. As my father-in-law Gordon would say, when you're doing electricity, keep one hand in your pocket. Don't complete the circuit. That's it. Try to simplify. It's great when things can be simplified. And Jesus simplified all of life. He said everything comes down to this. Love God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. Love is the single most important rule in the world. Do what is loving, and everything else will take care of itself. You just need to love God, love others, and love yourself. And if you do that, you satisfy all the rules. So, for example, one of those 600 laws says, don't steal. See, because if you love somebody, you wouldn't take their stuff. And one of those laws says, don't lie. And if you love somebody, you'd tell them the truth. And one of those laws says, don't hurt people. If you love somebody, you probably wouldn't punch them. Probably. Maybe like a fun punch, like a birthday punch. That's okay. Love covers it all. If you do love, you get all the rest. Now, it's important to remember this. But just because something is simple doesn't mean it's easy. Jesus summarized this for us. So simple. Love. Oh, you've got the key to life. How many of you are nailing it? You're like, oh, I got the love thing down pat. That's it. I just do the one thing. Right? It's not, just because it's clear, here's the problem. It doesn't mean we want to do it. Just knowing it doesn't mean you want to do it. Knowing the truth isn't enough. Here's the thing. We have to choose to do what's right. From the kids in the room to the oldest people in the room, we've got to choose to be loving. That's a choice. I know I'm supposed to love other people, but full disclosure, sometimes I don't want to. I know you don't have that. But sometimes I don't want to love somebody. Sometimes I have what I think is a good reason not to love somebody. Like, I've got a real good reason not to love them. Sometimes I don't want to share, like my food, especially my dessert. Like, I will order you your own dessert. If you want a dessert, I will buy it for you. Please don't take mine. Right? The loving thing would be to share, but I don't want to. I don't want to forgive sometimes. Sometimes I want to hold on to it because what you did was made me so angry, so frustrated, so I don't want to forgive you. Sometimes I don't want to help. I know I should help, but I'm tired. I'm worn out. I'm busy over here. I don't want to help. And sometimes the loving thing is like, I just don't feel like it. See, all day, every day, we're faced with the choice to love or not to love. We have to choose to love people. We have to choose to do what we know is right. You have to choose to think about what you should be thinking about. You have to choose, are you going to put your best into this, or are you going to do it half-hearted? This year, we go all the way back to January, we sense that God telling us that this was going to be a year of wholehearted devotion. To really commit ourselves to loving with our whole heart. That God said, it's time. In the grand scheme of life, that God said, it's time now for you to go all in. No holding back. No half-hearted love. It's time for you to mean this. It's time to get serious about doing this one thing. And so we talked about many things related to loving God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength as we look back on this year. We talked about the great mystery. If you missed any of this, you can go back. It's all on YouTube if you really want to listen to it. We talked about the great mystery of our relationship with God being like a marriage between a bride and a groom. And we explored what it meant to walk the narrow way. Many people choose to walk the wide way because it's easier, though it's not always the loving or right way. That we're called to walk the narrow way, which is hard, but it will be worth it because it always leads to life. We learned that faith can look different every day. Some day you need to build a boat. Some day you need to get in the boat. Some days you need to stay in the boat. Some days God says it's time to leave the boat. It's not about the boat. It's about faith and following Jesus. We examined prayers for a nation, what it really looks like to truly love our country. Again, not government systems and things like that, but we're talking about the people. What does it really look like to pray for our nation, to care for the people, and to love the people around us? We also learned that there's more. God has so much for us. We often don't realize that in the Spirit, God's got so many gifts for us to empower us to live a loving life in ways that naturally in the flesh we don't do. But God says, there's more. I've got more power, more good for you, more gifts that I want you to give to other people. And then we talked about leaving an inheritance, a spiritual gift that we can give to others. Not so much wealth and things like that, but there's a spiritual inheritance that we can pass on to other people. We can't pass on. We haven't received. But that love says, I will receive this so that I can pass it on to others. Thinking about what are we leaving behind for the generations to come. From Treehouse Kids to Rooted Youth to our logs, which is our Life Trees Outstanding guys, logs, to branches groups, to missions trips, to Mexico. Where's my Mexico team, man? Come on. Woo. All right, to our Better Together days and all the different things we've done throughout the year. We've learned and tried to understand, been on a journey of how to love with our heart, all our soul, all our mind, and all our strength. And hopefully, along the way, those seeds, those things that we've talked about have bore fruit in our lives. That the way you love God and others today, here's the hope, the way that you love God and others today, yourself, all of it, is greater than it was at the beginning of the year. That we've grown in our ability to love God, grown in our ability to love ourselves, grown in our ability to love others. See, that growth journey has a story. We each have a story. How you have grown in your ability to love is called a testimony. That's what that is. It's the evidence of God at work in your life, and everybody has one. Literally everybody has one. We've all got a story of what God is doing in our lives right now. Remember, you're His, right? And He is yours. God is at work in all our lives. So when we share what God has been doing in us, when we share with each other what God has been doing within us, how we've grown, what God's doing, here's what happens. When you share your story of what God is doing in your life, here's what happens. Other people are encouraged. they're built up because it reminds others that God is still in the business of changing people. When we hear what God is doing in somebody else's life, we're like, wow, they changed. God must still be at work. And not only that, it reminds us that God works in a variety of ways. That what God did for them may not be what God did for them. It may not be what God's doing for me. But God's doing all these different things in all sorts of different people. That God is not limited in the way that he works. He can work in infinite ways. And it reminds us that God is doing things that we don't know anything about. Because I didn't even know he was doing that in your life. And I didn't know he was doing that in your life. And God didn't ask my permission to do that in your life. God is free to do what he wants to do, whether I know anything about it or not. See, testimonies remind us how big God is. He's working on all these things, and we couldn't possibly keep track of all the different ways that God is at work in our lives. It also reminds us that what God has done for others, he can do for me. That if you are maybe going through something that I remember what's happened to somebody else, and I go, oh, God worked like that in their life. God can work like that in my life. Our stories help people see what the simple truth of love that maybe can be hard to live out, what that looks like. So in a moment, again, today's going to be a little different. In a moment, I'm going to give you all an opportunity to give the gift of encouragement to others. And you're going to have a chance to share just a piece of your story with all of us. All right, I'm going to open. Yes, it's going to be a little different. And you're like, oh, I don't know what people are going to say. Neither do I. How many of you are uncomfortable right now? It's okay. All right, we're just going to say, hey, if you've got a story, that God can work through us, through our stories. We believe that God can work through those stories. And so I'm going to give you a chance to share a piece of your story. So I want you just to think about it. We've kind of set this out. I let you know about this last week. So some of you had some time to think about it. If you didn't hear about it, it's okay. Would you just take a moment and think, how did you grow in loving God wholeheartedly this past year? What circumstances did you go through in this past year that helped you grow in your love maybe for God or for yourself or for others? Who are some of the people that helped you grow in your life this past year? Think about that. What new understanding did God teach you? What new realizations, just sort of like light bulbs, came on and you go, I never saw this before, that now I understand this, and it helps me in my faith and understand who God is and who I am a little better. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to share what God has been up to in your life this past year. And before we do, I just want to give a few important directions, just for if you're going to share, what that needs to look like. One, give God credit. Honor God with what you say. Make him the star of your story. Okay, so that's first and foremost. Every time we give a testimony, this is not me. It's God, God. So as you're talking, talk about God. Make him the star. Two, make sure what you're saying is encouraging to others. Don't just, it was a tough year and everything was lousy and awful, but okay, I'm going to sit down now. Like, no, somehow be encouraging. Let's celebrate, right, what God has done. That's the point of a testimony. It's okay to say I'm struggling and be honest about those things, but say, but God has helped me through it. That's fine. Okay, but be encouraging. Find some way to be encouraging. And then third, keep it brief so that others can share too. Okay, I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity. So fourth, keep it brief. And then fifth, keep it brief. All those. And one other thing I would say on this. And God actually spoke to me about this morning as I was just praying. Don't just think about what you want to say. Listen to the testimonies. Because I believe that something that's going to be shared this morning from our church, remember we're the church, I'm not the church, we are the church. Something that is going to be shared today is for you. That there's something you need to hear that's going to come from somebody else's experience, somebody else's testimony that is for you. So tune your ears right now. Say, God, help me hear what I need to hear to be encouraged, to be built up, to be strengthened today. So I want to encourage you, just set an expectation now that something that's going to be said is for you. So listen with that kind of expectation. You can share, but also be listening. Does that make sense? Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to start. Now, we got a mic here. I'm going to use red, okay? Rich back there, we got red. And I've actually asked a few people to help us get started, to kind of go first, and I'm going to start with some of our college kids. So Noah, would you come on up and ask Noah to start first? And he's just going to share a little bit. Noah, would you come on up and share your story?
Alright, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my 2024. I'm a sophomore at Belmont University right now, and it didn't start easy. I was in the hospital until the day before Christmas Eve. I couldn't walk, I couldn't really move, and that's not really the way you want to start a year. But I ended up going back to school in that spring semester, and things weren't going so well. I was battling something that I didn't even know I had until I came home in May. Still had an elevated heart rate from the hospital. We went to check it out, found out I have Graves' disease, and that was limiting my ability to get school done and just be proficient in life. So I had a rough spring semester. It took away a lot of good things that were going to happen. I was going to go on a trip with my dad to Italy in May. That probably would have been my favorite vacation. I was going to go study abroad in Barcelona, but that got taken away too because of how poorly I did. But there was a reason that I am not going to study abroad in Barcelona in 2 weeks. This semester, I found a church actually called Life Church. So just by the name, you know, it's where I meant to be, where I was meant to be. And I was there on a Saturday where we were serving Nashville, and we were just handing out cards and handing out, buying people groceries, and just doing good work in Nashville. And we were meeting, and one of the pastors, as we were in a circle, she said, "We are better together." And I was like, there's no way she just said one of Life Tree's core values on my first day here. I know I'm meant to be here. That's crazy. But I found that church, and I got really involved in their leadership team and their youth group, and it's been a blessing because now I can go back this semester and continue working with them, continue just doing good work in Nashville and beyond. I went to Brazil last year on a missions trip. Absolutely fell in love with missions again, even after Mexico. I'm going back this year in May. But it's crazy how God has worked in my life because there's been so many things where I ask God why this happened. Like, what is He doing? There's no way this could end up being positive. But yet every time it does. And I don't know His plan for this time because we never know His plan, but I know that I can trust God. I know it's going to be a positive outcome. So I challenge you to take anything in your life that is negative right now and really trust in God and be faithful that it's going to turn out positive because with your love of God, with prayer, with reading the Bible, I know it will.
Awesome. Felicity, would you come on up and share? Let's get up for Felicity, everybody.
Hello. So, to start, this year was a huge growing year for me, not physically, but mentally and spiritually. For those who don't know, this year I graduated from Ronsel High School, and now I go to the University of Valley Forge. The shift between schools has been an incredibly large change for me, but I couldn't be happier. When preparing for college, it was hard for me to accept the fact that I was leaving home and the town that I grew up in with so many memories attached to it. But at the same time, I couldn't wait to get out of here. Not here, because I absolutely love Life Tree, as I always will, but I couldn't wait to start fresh and go someplace new with new people and new experiences. Looking back, high school was hard for me because I always felt like I was surrounded by people that didn't have the same values as me, and I struggled to find a good group of people that I could call my best friends. I often felt alone and wanted badly to have a circle of people that were like me and were like a family. So, because of this, I was ecstatic to get to college and meet new people. Well, I prayed a lot, and the Lord answered. Since being at college, I can say that I now have an amazing group of close friends that I can call family. These friends not only encourage and support me at all times, but they have also helped me grow closer to God. The act of constantly praying for and being there for each other, doing Bible studies, having biblical conversations, and so much more has benefited me greatly. God has blessed me more than I can even understand with my friends at college, and I thank Him every day for His answer to my prayers. Also, this past summer, I have seen God work in amazing ways, specifically on our missions trip to Mexico. We visited drug rehab centers and other areas of people in need and began to share God's love with them. It was incredible to see how lives can be changed with God's love and His peace. This impacted me strongly and made me confident in God's presence and truth because I've seen the way that He moves. So that's some of what God has done in my life this past year, along with so many other things, and I cannot wait to see what He does in my life next year.
Appreciate it. All right. So, somebody else. Anybody else? Come on, who's going to be the first, grown up to get up here? These kids are doing it already. So, just, again, something that you feel like you'd like to share about what God's done in your life this past year that could be encouraging and uplifting to our church. Anybody want to jump on up here? I can start calling on people. Come on, do it. Come on, Jay. All right, let's give it up.
I like Trudy. And another one. Hi, I'm Jason Arnold. I'm the leader of the Logs Ministry here, and I guess some of you might know the story about how that started, but I was on a spiritual retreat weekend, and the whole time that I was there, I was getting this tug in my heart, and it was basically like, we don't have this here. I should say, it was a men's weekend, so it was very specifically tailored for that. And it's a 3-day thing, and for those 3 days, I didn't sleep. It was like all I was thinking about. I'm like getting emotional thinking about it, but it was like so intense that he was like, "We could have this. This could be something that Lifetree has, and that other people could be growing from." And from that, I brought it to Pastor Dan. It obviously turned into what turned into the Logs breakfasts, and now I'm seeing how many people were involved, changed by that in some way or another, and it's encouraging to me because the gift that we get once we have it, knowing Jesus and having His love, is to be able to share. So every time that I do that, and there's somebody that hasn't been to this building before but shows up, and then they have a positive experience, that's what it's about. And then them bringing that back to their family, because we never know which spark is going to be the one that really ignites things for them. And so I would just encourage each of you, whatever that spark is in your life and that you feel, listen to it, pray about it, and if you show up, God will always do His part, and that's all.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. All right, somebody else just stand up. Come on up. Come on. Somebody. Liam? All right, come on up, bud. Absolutely. There you go. Thanks, man. All right. What are you going to be thankful for this year?
When I was a baby, I was going in my thing of my mom and dad, and I grew up, and then I'm going to be 5 in February, and I will be 6
Awesome. Fantastic. That's true words have never been spoken. That's awesome. All right, thank you, buddy. Love you. Love you. The church is better because of Liam's here. All right, Janet, come on up. All right. You don't have to tell us how.
So, I'm at the stage of life where I'm kind of looking at what's the next chapter going to be for me. Looking at what's getting ready to retire, and so much of my identity has been tied up into what I do. And then when you're thinking about making that transition, there's a lot of questions that you have. Almost feeling like, well, now what? Who will I be? But God's been speaking to me this year about that I'm His, and He has me. And why do you ever doubt about the next chapter or what's coming next? That He's always been there. He's always been there for me. He's never let me down. So with that, it's given me peace that I could walk into this next chapter knowing that I am who I am through God, because He's brought me to this place in my life, and He's going to carry me through for the rest as well. So I just want to encourage everyone that we are who we are through God, not by what we do, that we're His, and He loves us just because of that.
Somebody else. Don't be shy. All right, now why not make it a tag team? Here we go. Paolo, you're next. Let's go for Mike, everybody.
Well, I don't know if I can follow Liam's act and my voice, but I'll do my best. So this was an awesome year for me. Kids got married. My daughter had a baby, and God started saying legacy. Legacy, legacy, legacy. And I took that as a full-time job. God spoke to me and said, you're going to pour into your family. You're going to pour into your kids. You're going to pour into your grandkids. And I said, okay, amen. And then God started speaking to me about, hey, you got to start journaling because you're going to write a book. God's been telling me for a year, you're going to write a book. Years and years, He's been speaking to my heart. I've been running from it. So don't run from God, because 3:30 in the morning hurts, right, Jay? I was telling Jay I'm up 3:30, so I'm on the wall today. I'm on the wall. So when God says do something, do it. So now I'm writing the book. God inspired. It's called Answering the Call. Ironic, right? Answering the call. So what does that look like for all of us? When God says do something, I'm going to leave with this. When God says do something, just do it. Don't fight Him, because it's a rough road when you fight Him. Because God is good. Amen.
Thank you. Can't wait to read it. We'll get copies here, Blanche. Somebody else. You, come on up, bud.
Yeah, hallelujah, it's a miracle you finally stood up, right? So as you guys know, like most of you guys know, I'm the boot that just came back from boot camp and School of Infantry. It was a really interesting experience. Honestly, like I'd say it's changing. Personally, before it, I was lost, but thanks to God, now I'm found, right? And I didn't know what to expect going into boot camp. I was honestly like so anxious, like I had no clue what to do. I didn't even know if I was gonna make it through, so I never wanted to make like assumptions that I would make it through, you know? So I got there finally. I made some pretty cool friends, and honestly, the first week was the hardest week, because you're there, you're separated from everything, you're in the unknown. You're in the darkness, you don't know where you're going. It's like you're walking down this path and you're not sure if it's the right one and if it's going to continue or not. And I remember I got there and immediately I got roughed up by instructors because I was all over the place at the time and I wasn't thinking. Rule of advice, never throw a moleskin at won't end well. But I learned that in all the like pain and kind of getting roughed up, it's that they really did care about you. Because in everything you do, it's so that you survive. They want to make sure that as you being the final product, you're able to make it through and get through life without having any issues. I think one of the biggest things that honestly helped me through was God at that time. I remember that we'd be sitting like in the chow hall, we'd be doing whatever drills and stuff. We'd be getting messed up all over the place because my platoon was so bad. But I remember I'd look up and I'd see the stars, and it'd be late at night, it'd be bad. And I'd literally be praying like, oh my gosh, like, thank you God for this like experience, because it's kind of like hope that you don't know that you even, that existed, like. And it was so beautiful, especially because it's Dallas Banks in like South Carolina, that is so clear. And the only other thing that got me through is, I'm gonna let you like in on a little advice on like kind of Marine tradition here. I'm sure you know it. But there's a song they started, it's kind of like a tradition when you go to church, and it's called Sunday's Coming, because every day you're just trying to make it to Sunday just so you can relax. Sunday was a religious day, so they wouldn't train you at all or do anything, pretty much. You go to church and stuff, you go to your chow hall times, you do all that. And I remember just going there, and I was literally like thinking like, dang, am I really gonna make it through this? And I just remember there were probably over, I'd say like a good like over 2,000 maybe, like Marines just in there, all different phases and stuff. And we all sang this song, Sunday's Coming. And the loudest group was always the Marines that were just about to graduate. And it was such an amazing song, honestly. I'd say listen to it if you haven't. But it was one of the most moving traditions I think I've ever seen in my whole life. And I remember I started to tear up because it was like a sign of hope. And we'd all just, it was like almost like a memory that we'd all be together. And I think that was something that really changed me, and I'm so grateful that God gave me those people and my brothers to get me through it.
Awesome. Thank you, dude. All right. Who's next? Linda's gonna. I'll bring it back to you, Linda, so you don't have to walk up here. All right. I'm all the way back here. Let's give it up for Linda, everybody.
My testimony starts many years ago. I'm sharing school. I found Pastor Dean's sermon notes. So I thought, what's going on here? I didn't know that you could have church in school. So being a nosy person I am, I read his notes and I said, I really like what this guy has to say. I think I'm going to come and visit this church. So for a while, I was trying to go to my old church, come to my new church, go to my old church. Every Sunday I was going to 2 church services, and I said, there's got to be a better plan for me. And I said, you have to let me know, God, where do you want me? Where am I supposed to be? So he said, Linda, this is where you belong. You belong with Life Tree. There's a plan for you here and a family that will love you. And I found that. And through all of life's incidences, I guess I should say, I had the support, I had the prayers, I had everything from God that I needed to get me through life. And I'm so grateful for him for sending me to Life Tree, for the family that I love. And that's all of you.
Love you.
Thank you. All right. Someone else? Kevin? He's nominating? Oh, you stood up 3 times? Yeah, it's all good. My apologies. Here we go, Kevin. Let's get up for Kevin, everybody.
How's it going, guys? Yeah, just there's something that I've been thinking about kind of as we've been talking today, and as I've been kind of reflecting over this past year and just over, growth that's taken place in 2024 and even, the few years before. I think, over the last 12 years since high school, I can think of so many times where I've thought to myself, okay, I think I'm pretty good in my walk with the Lord. I feel like I know most things. I feel like I have most things down pat. I think I'm pretty much done growing. And each time I think that and I look back on it, I look back on those periods of time, I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe how long it was. Like, even still, I feel like, full disclosure, I'm 29. I feel like, God willing, when I'm 39, 49, 59, I'm going to look back at those points and be like, what was I thinking? And I think one of the biggest catalysts to growth, one of the biggest things that God has put in my life has been just like other people. And I've had some fantastic mentorship from different people in the church. Kevin, Jason, Dan, several others. And that's done wonders. I would just encourage anybody, I think that it's okay to have questions. The problem, I guess, lies when you have the questions and you just let them sit, you don't do anything with them. Rather find people that you trust, let people in on what's going on. I've definitely, over the 2.5 years that I've been here, I've definitely been through my fair share of stuff. And having this community and this family and specific people that I can turn to has been so incredibly helpful. So hopefully that's encouragement to some of you here, and for anybody who's maybe started coming, who hasn't, maybe dipping their feet in, but hasn't, fully gone into the pool yet. Come in, the water's nice. So.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. All right. Anybody else? Somebody else? Doris, come on up. All right.
Yeah, praise God. I can relate to most of you, your testimonies and the challenges of ups and downs. And my testimony is I started this year with more challenges that I could never handle. I moved to this town. I had my plans, and I thought everything is going to go well. At least I've moved closer to church and to everybody. But I felt like I went miles away from everybody. And I went through quite some challenges of health and tottering the sign of depression. And until the series of the narrow path, and I kept on updating Pastor Dan, and he reminded me, God didn't say it's going to be easy. And kept on thinking about it. Like, I thought I had gone through all my challenges way before, and I'm growing, and like Kevin, I was getting stronger in the Lord, and I thought I can pray, and I can pray for others. But I was like, wow, what? How wrong I was. I was lost. I didn't know nothing, because it drove me to my knees, just telling God, I don't think I really knew you. I didn't want to know you better. Teach me how to be patient. James chapter 1, when you go through trials, that builds perseverance. It wasn't easy building that perseverance. And then at the middle of the year, or towards the end of the year, I got into real health crisis. And I kept on asking, really, God? Again? Am I going back to where I was at the beginning of the year? And many of the times I just felt like, really, I don't think I was saved. I don't think I really knew where I was. I don't think this is due. I don't think it works. But in my questioning of asking God, where are you, and are you real, and all that, God reminded me I'm real, and I have, in my life, He was the same place He was when Jesus hung on the cross. I'm asking, where are you, God? And He reminds me, I am where I was when my son hung on the cross for you. It wasn't easy for Jesus to go through where He went, but God did not say, okay, my son, just step down, it's over. He just let Him go through the cross because of me, because of you, because of the relationship that He wanted to build between me and Him. So that reminds me it's not going to be easy. He didn't promise it's going to be easy. I'm going to go through challenges. That's what built my faith. Thank goodness God healed me. God healed me from depression at the beginning of the year. God healed me from almost near-death experience with my heart, getting a pacemaker. And I just look back, I'm like, God, you're so good. You're so good. Because looking back, I'm like, it's okay I go through it. Because I would not have known what I know today. I would not have grown the way I've grown today. So I'll encourage you, when you go through those trials, remember, God didn't say it's going to be easy, but when you have gone through it all, you just look back and say, so God, you knew what you're doing. You are there all along. He did not turn back on you. He was there all along. But He wants you to get to know Him. He wants you to know the price that was paid for you. Because, like we said earlier, go getting it all, you don't know the value of what you have. If you get it easy, you don't know the value, right? So be encouraged. God is with you, whether it's sickness, whether it's issues in family, whatever it is, God is there. He's going to see you through. If you don't go through it, you will not know who He is in your life. If you go through it, you get to know Him more because you see Him deliver you and take you to the other side. So be encouraged. God is good. He knows it all. He cares. He's a healer. He's all that you need. He's the answer to your problems. I've gone through it. So many of us have gone through it, and we are better together. And believe it, He loves you, and He's going to see you through it.
Thank you. One or two more, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, here we go. Ethan.
Hello, everyone. Bear with me. I'm not great with words, so I'll try my best. If I say something, just blame him. He raised me. For those of you who don't know, just some context. The past year, so last summer, or the summer I graduated high school, which was 2 years ago. So my senior year, the summer after I graduated. So I had like all these plans in stone of like what I wanted to do with my life when I graduated high school. I wanted to just go into film, movie production, stuff like that. And I had everything. I had my dream school set up to go to. And during that summer, I found out that there were some issues, and I actually wasn't able to go to the place where I had wanted to go, and the place that I felt like I was belonging at. And in that time, I completely like lost myself and like who I was, and I ended up finding the Lord truly for like the first time. And in those 4 weeks where I had to scramble and figure out what I'm going to do as like a freshman in college, the Lord ended up radically changing my life. I ended up having the opportunity to go on a mission trip to Mexico, actually with LifeTree, like a lot of you did. And there I was never the same coming back. I understood that the Lord had something so much deeper for me and greater than I could have ever imagined or put on myself. There was so much more purpose than I could have understood. And anything that this world had to offer, the Lord, just like the little thing I experienced for a week in another country, gave me so much more perspective than anything I'd ever experienced myself. So in those 4 weeks, the Lord ended up just pretty much changing everything I ever knew, and I began to pursue Him fully. And as I began to pursue Him in those, like my first semester of college, I ended up going to the University of Valley Forge. Florida ended up providing an amazing opportunity for me to go there for enough money. And while I was there, the Lord ended up pretty much just like stripping all that I knew away. And amidst that, there was so much pain and just brokenness. But like, because I was like at such a low point in my life, and like I was at a point where I was pretty much crying on my knees, like, Lord, like why would you bring me here? Like, why did you take all this away? That was the point where I feel like I had the most perspective, because like when the Lord takes, when he shows how great He is compared to where we are, like that's the point when we become most vulnerable. And He says, okay, let me work now. Let me lift you up. You know, we're not the ones who are supposed to pick ourselves up. It's the Lord who picks us up. And as I began to pursue Him and like say, okay, Lord, I trust you, that's when my life just began to unfold. And the Lord ended up miraculously allowing me to go back to the school that I wanted to go to. So last semester, I am now attending Southeastern University in Florida, a school I've been wanting to go to for a while. And while I'm here, I was studying business and missions, and whatever. I don't even know what I was going to do. And I ended up having a really awesome conversation with someone. I attended a serve day, so like pretty much we were just going to go into Tampa and just go help people with whatever they needed. And I don't really like those things. Like for me, like in my mind, like that's boring, and like I just don't want to do that, to be honest with you. So it started out with something that I did. Okay, this is back then. Okay, so I didn't want to do it, and I ended up having an amazing conversation with somebody that I didn't know, and a lady. People were like, "Oh, like you need to meet this lady," and she ended up being the leader of Southeastern University's like missions program. And as I began to talk to this lady, we began to like make all these connections, and it turned out that this random lady that I've never met in my entire life ended up being a student of my grandmother's like 30 years ago. And it was just like this random connection. But what random connection started from a decision that I made to do something ended up turning into like an amazing relationship. And now I serve on the missions team at my school's on the school's leadership. And I have the opportunity not only like to go on missions trips, but this year I have the opportunity to lead 2 missions trips, doing one to the Middle East and one to Nicaragua. And it's like, who would have thought, you know? If the Lord hadn't allowed me to go through all those things, I wouldn't be where I am right now. Like, I would have nothing. Like, I would be pursuing what I want to pursue, you know, living for 50% when the Lord has so much more to give me. And, like, all this to say, and, like, let me encourage you, like, our expectations can get in the way of what the Lord is seeking to do. And it's like, what we may think may be the greatest way or the greatest success, the Lord has so much more in store, and He'll end up using the things that you love most to reach the most people. So let that encourage you.
Is there one more? Give somebody one last chance. All right.
Good morning, everybody. I know I'm supposed to be up here giving you my testimony. I don't really know what's about to come out, so bear with me. This year, or actually I should say last year, was really me dipping my feet into faith and really accepting God and what He had for me. And I think this year, after accepting it, was facing those challenges that come with it. And just for some context, the beginning of my year was amazing. And then as soon as spring hit, things really started to like go downhill from there. I went to go see my mom. We got into a physical altercation. We ended up having to call the cops, all this craziness. We didn't speak for months. I ended up going to Mexico, and that really changed my perspective on what families go through when those people feel abandoned. And I can really relate to what that feels like. But I couldn't really hear God's voice in that storm, and I think that's because of my own. So, as the months went on, I really just tried to figure my own thing out and like do what I knew was best instead of confiding in God and trusting that He knew what was best for me instead. I ended up gaining a great friend group, Hugh, Allie, Shakar, all of them, they're great. I ended up finding a good job and finding some stability where I'm at now at home. I feel like my relationships with my family have really been allowed to grow because of my relationship with God in the past few months. And so I would just encourage, don't let your voice get in the way of God's, because He's gonna fight you. Not in the sense of like, no, I need to be the one who's in charge, but you're really just fighting yourself until you give up and you allow God to just take over again. So, yeah, thank you.
I'm sure we could sit here all day and keep going. There's no end to what God does in our lives. Thank you for those who've taken some time to share this morning. I encourage you, please, grab lunch with people, grab coffee. If you're having a bagel, just say, hey, like ask the question, what's God been doing in your life? Don't just say, how are you doing? How's work? Ask some deeper questions when you have those opportunities. Dig a little, because it'll bless them to tell, and it'll bless you to hear. So I would really, really encourage you to do that. So as we wrap up today, it was important today, at the end of the year, not to look ahead. You need to pause and look back. It's always important to pause before you step into the next thing to reflect on what God has done. So I would really encourage you, if this is not a habit, not a practice, not something you do, I would encourage you to do this. Sometime between now and New Year's Eve, take 20, 30 minutes, get a journal, and make a list of the things God has done in your life this year. Just write it, capture it, write it down. There's something to naming it. Oh yeah, I know God did it. I don't name it. Put it down, identify it, write it in a journal sometime. I don't care how old or how young you are. Everybody can do this. Okay? Take time. The kids can probably write it in a computer and a phone better than the older folks. So like everybody, just capture it somehow. If you want to put a note in your phone, whatever you want to do, but write down and capture what God has done. Pause in your own life and do this. It's important. Next week, then we're going to be in January, first one, and we're going to turn our attention now to look ahead. And I'll be sharing, I believe God has put in our hearts as a leadership team a new season. Wholehearted Devotion was 2024. We're going to turn the calendar. We believe God's got a new timely word for us, and we're going to set our expectation on something new that God desires to do in 2025. So we'll be talking about that next year. I encourage you, come ready to receive what God has for you in that new year. Just as this was a timely word for us, there's a new word God wants to say. It's not that He's going to stop calling us to be wholeheartedly devoted, but it's just that God has something new that He wants to speak to us. I believe God is on the move, and as long as the world keeps spinning, God's still working. So come ready to receive whatever God has for you. To that end, next Sunday, we're going to be kicking off a week of prayer and fasting. All right, so we start the new year. It's an opportunity for us to begin the new year with sort of a sacred beginning. It's a holy time. The Lord delights to see the work begin. So new beginnings are special. We want to make sure that we're focused and responsive to what God is doing. So in your programs, when everybody came in, you should have received a booklet. Can you everybody take that out? There should be an insert in there, all right, that says week of prayer and fasting. Does everybody see that? If you don't have it, we'll have extras on the welcome table on your way out so that you can get them. So what we're going to do is we're going to have each day of the week, starting not next Monday, so not this week coming, but next Monday, we're going to have a prayer time throughout the week. Those prayer times will be in your programs there. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, they'll all be alternating between lunchtime or in the evening. Those are going to alternate, and those will be on Zoom to make sure that everybody can be accessible. Not everybody can get here. We don't own a building, so you have to come to the office. So we're going to do on Zoom Monday through Thursday. Friday night, we're going to do an in-person prayer meeting at our offices. All right, that schedule will be on there. If you're not able to participate, you have the prayer points there. You can join us from wherever you are. It's just a way to start the year by praying for those things. In addition to that, what was I going to say? fasting is another way that we can prepare ourselves, and I want to encourage you. Fasting is not something you have to do, but fasting is a way to prepare ourselves to receive, to say, God, I'm going to set myself apart, I'm going to dedicate this time to saying, I want to pay attention. And so you can fast a meal, you can fast a day, you can say, I want to fast lunches throughout the week, I want to, you pick. It's up to you, between you and God. I would encourage you. Say, God, how do you want me to participate this week? You all know some health restrictions, things like that, things you can and can't do. But we're saying, do something. Find some way that you can participate. And then again, that'll be in the week to come. So we'll talk more about that next Sunday. But I encourage you to begin asking God for direction regarding how you can participate in that to prepare us for what God wants to do in the new year. And now as we close, I'm going to invite the band back up. As we close, one of the great blessings in coming together like this is the opportunity to be together. You know, we're not that far removed from 2020, where we didn't have this for a time, and still appreciate the gift of being with you today. I realize you don't want to take for granted this. And not just this, but there are people who were with us last year who are not here today. And the truth and the reality is there are some with us now who may not be with us next year. Right? And so, togetherness is a gift. We need to be grateful for this moment. And there's a joy in being able to celebrate together all that God has done. There's a joy in being able to share our collective stories like this and say, look what God is doing in all of our lives. As hoping that this is what God's going to do. It builds faith in us. So as we close, I'd like to invite, if you're able and if you're comfortable, it's a little different, but I'd like to just close and consecrate this year by inviting everybody forward. If you wouldn't mind coming and standing up front here, if you're able, would you all come right now? You can come forward. And I want to close this time with prayer together. It's a way of consecrating and confirming our identity as the family of God, that collectively we are the church. As you've heard, we're better together. So I invite you to just come forward this time again if you're able. Just after Moses passed on the commandments to the people of Israel, he spoke these words to the whole assembly. He said this. He said, listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I am giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Just talk about them when you're at home, when you're on the road. When you're going to bed and when you're getting up, tie them to your hands and wear them on your foreheads as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. There's something to saying, God, I remember that it comes down to one thing. Talk about this wherever you go. It comes down to one thing. Love Him. Love others as you love yourselves. So would you pray with me today as we close? Lord, you alone are God. And your love for us far exceeds any love we have known anywhere else. Your love is unconditional. It's perfect. It's unfailing. And a love like that changes everybody who encounters it. Thank you for loving us like you do. Lord, as we gather together today, we confess that we do not yet love perfectly. We're each still in process of learning how much we're loved and how to love like that. Please forgive us for the countless times this past year we've not loved like we should have. We need your grace. Today we've reflected and will continue to reflect on all that you have done for us in this past year. The ways we've grown, the challenges you've enabled us to overcome, the mountain peaks you've graciously allowed us to climb, and the valleys through which you have been our constant companion. We should not stand here today, and we could not stand here today without your great love. So as we come to the end of this season, may we continue to journey toward wholehearted devotion. May your love continue to transform us daily more and more into your perfectly loving image. We covenant together to keep the one thing, the supreme truth of love, in front of us for the rest of our lives. We commit to upholding this in our hearts, in our homes, in our schools, in our workplaces. From the moment we rise up to the moment we lay down. May we be people marked by your great love. It's in your mighty, matchless, beautiful name that